message on my phone made my blood run cold. They know who you really are, Russo. I had 48 hours before Giovanni's enemies used my father's name to destroy everything, including the man I'd sworn to hate but couldn't stop loving. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning, to where Sophie Russo, that's me, decided to walk straight into hell with revenge in her heart and her father's ghost at her back. The flight from Boston to New York lasted 6 hours, but it felt like 6 lifetimes. I pressed my forehead against the cold airplane window, watching clouds roll past like the lies I'd been rehearsing. My name is Sophie Russo, I'm 28 years old, and I was flying toward the man who murdered my father with nothing but a fake ID and 10 years of buried rage. Behind me, 300 miles away, my mother sat alone in our cramped apartment overlooking the harbor, her frail hands probably still clutching the rosary she'd pressed into mine at the airport. "Go, baby girl," she'd whispered, voice cracking with emotion she tried to hide. "Make a life without shadows." Shadows. That's all we'd had for 10 years, ever since the police pulled Papa's body from the Hudson River with a bullet hole in his chest and sympathy in their eyes that never quite reached their paperwork. Daniel Russo, small-time numbers runner who'd made the mistake of challenging the Martinelli family's territory. 28 days after his 40th birthday, he was gone. I was 18, top of my class at MIT, scholarship in hand, dreaming of building unbreakable security systems for tech giants. I sold my textbooks to pay for his funeral flowers. The scholarship disappeared when the loan sharks came circling, demanding payment for debts Papa had hidden from us. Mama got sick, stress, the doctors said, but I knew it was grief eating her alive from the inside. I dropped out, took jobs nobody wanted, waitressing in Providence diners where truckers grabbed more than their coffee cups, scrubbing office floors in Hartford until my hands cracked and bled, cleaning hotel rooms in New Haven where I learned not to look too closely at what people left behind. 10 years of running. 10 years of lying about my name, my history, my father rotting at the bottom of the river because Giovanni Martinelli had decided he was a problem that needed solving. And now I was flying straight into the wolf's den. Sullivan, I'd told the employment agency, the lies sliding off my tongue smooth as expensive whiskey. Sophie Sullivan, not Russo. They didn't ask questions, shady agencies never do when you're willing to work for cash and keep your mouth shut. Clean background check, they'd promised. No ties to Boston, no connection to anyone who mattered. Just another nameless woman with calloused hands and a locket burning against her chest, the only thing of Papa's I had left, a cheap gold wolf that he'd worn on his ring finger until the river took him. The brownstone hit me like a physical blow on my first morning. I stood on the sidewalk clutching my single suitcase, staring up at 4 stories of polished brownstone and iron gates that probably cost more than Mama's entire apartment building. Bulletproof windows disguised behind elegant white curtains. Security cameras tucked discreetly into the cornices. Doors that looked like wood but moved with the heavy precision of reinforced steel. A fortress pretending to be a home. The agency handler, a weasel-faced man named Jerry with a thick Brooklyn accent and yellowed teeth, shoved me through the gates at dawn. "Keep your head down, Sullivan. Mr. Martinelli doesn't like noise, doesn't like questions, doesn't like help that thinks they're anything more than furniture. You dust, you clean, you cook what the chef tells you to cook, and you stay invisible. Got it?" I nodded, swallowing the recognition that threatened to choke me. Martinelli. The name alone made my father's last letter burn in my memory, ink-stained pages I'd found hidden under his mattress, furious scrawl raging about wolves in expensive suits muscling into the neighborhood rackets, about old rules being broken, about men who killed without conscience. Inside, silence wrapped around me like a shroud. The foyer alone was bigger than our entire Boston apartment, marble floors polished to mirrors, a grandfather clock ticking away seconds with the patience of old money, a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than I'd earned in my entire life. I followed the head housekeeper, Mrs. Wordsworth, a stern British woman in her 60s who moved with military precision and wore her gray hair in a tight bun, through rooms that belonged in magazines. Living room with furniture nobody sat on. Dining room with a table that could seat 20. Library with leather-bound books that looked untouched by human hands. "You start in the kitchen," Mrs. Wordsworth said, her accent crisp and unforgiving. 6 a.m. every morning. Breakfast preparation, cleaning, laundry. Mr. Martinelli leaves at 7:30. The boy eats at 8. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not touch anything in Mr. Martinelli's study. You do not ask questions. Understand? Yes, ma'am. The last girl lasted 3 weeks before she forgot those rules. Mrs. Wordsworth's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. She's not here anymore. I understood the warning perfectly. The kitchen was restaurant-grade, stainless steel counters that gleamed like they'd never known a fingerprint, an espresso machine that probably required an engineering degree, cabinets full of dishes that cost more than my mother's medical bills. I started with the basics: coffee brewing, fruit sliced into perfect arrangements nobody would eat, eggs beaten smooth for an omelette the chef would actually cook. My hands shook the whole time. Upstairs, children's toys scattered across a suite that looked like a decorator's showroom. Wooden trucks half buried under silk throw pillows. A violin case gathering dust in the corner. Building blocks arranged in careful patterns, then abandoned. The agency file had mentioned Ryan Martinelli, 7 years old, shuttled between Nanny since his mother disappeared 2 years ago. Spoiled but smart, Jerry had sneered. Don't get attached. Nobody else does. I hadn't planned to get attached. This was survival, not salvation. I was here to understand the man who'd killed my father, to find some kind of proof, some kind of justice in a world where men like Giovanni Martinelli bought their way out of consequences. I wasn't here to care. My first glimpse of Giovanni Martinelli happened that evening, just as sunset bled through the library windows and turned everything the color of old blood. I was dusting the bookshelves, leather spines of Shakespeare and Sun Tzu and accounting ledgers disguised as classic literature, when I felt him before I saw him. A shift in the air, like a predator entering a room and claiming it as territory. He was taller than I'd imagined from the newspaper photos I'd obsessed over for 10 years. Broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled grace of someone trained in violence but schooled in expensive manners. Dark hair silvered at the temples, like storm clouds edged in lightning. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my salary, still perfectly pressed despite whatever he'd been doing all day. Rain beaded on his overcoat, sliding off like the man himself was too important for weather to touch. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Ice blue, sharp as broken glass, scanning the room with the assessment of someone who calculated threats and opportunities in the same glance. They slid over me without pause, dismissing the maid as furniture, as background noise, as nothing worth noticing. "Evening," he said, voice like low thunder rolling over gravel. "Good evening, sir." I kept my gaze on the books, on the dust cloth in my hands, on anything except the face of the man who'd murdered my father. He poured whiskey from a crystal decanter, the sound echoing through the silent library like a countdown, and disappeared into his study. The door clicked shut with the finality of a lock engaging. I sagged against the bookshelf, heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Up close, Giovanni Martinelli wasn't the monster I'd built in my head for 10 years. He was worse. He was human. Real. A man who poured whiskey and came home tired and probably had no memory of Daniel Russo's name, let alone his death. That night, alone in my basement room, bare walls, single bulb swinging from a chain, mattress that smelled of industrial detergent, I traced Papa's locket and whispered the promise I'd made over his grave: I'll make him pay. Somehow, I'll make him pay. I just didn't know yet that payment came in forms I'd never imagined. Ryan found me the next morning. I was in the playroom, gathering scattered toys into bins, when I heard the small voice behind me. "You're the new one?" I turned to find a child who looked like a miniature version of his father, wild dark curls that refused to be tamed, eyes the color of twilight, serious expression too old for 7 years. He wore Spider-Man pajamas and held a wooden train engine like it was the most important thing in the world. "I'm Sophie," I said, kneeling to his level so we could look at each other eye to eye. "And you must be Ryan." "They all leave." He said it matter-of-factly, without emotion, like he was commenting on the weather. "Mama did. Nanny Clara." The French guy who yelled at me for getting paint on the carpet. Nanny Jessica lasted 2 weeks. What makes you different? The question cut deeper than he could possibly know. What made me different? I was here under false pretenses, using a fake name, planning revenge against his father. I was probably the worst possible person to be in this child's life. But when I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, I didn't see Giovanni Martinelli's son. I saw a lonely kid who'd learned not to get attached because everyone always left. I saw myself at 8 years old, watching Papa's casket sink into the ground and understanding that the world was a place where people disappeared without warning. I don't know if I'm different, I admitted, because lying to a 7-year-old felt wrong in a way that lying to his father didn't. But I'm here now. Want to show me what you're building with those trains? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or the faint spark of hope he'd learned to bury deep. He sat down on the carpet and started laying out track pieces, explaining in precise detail how the loop needed to connect perfectly or the train would derail. His small hands moved with careful precision, fitting pieces together like solving a puzzle. I sat beside him, asking questions, offering pieces when he needed them, listening to him talk about trains and tracks and the physics of curves. He was smart, scary smart for 7, with the kind of mind that needed challenges, not flashcards. Mrs. Wordsworth found us an hour later, her expression tight with disapproval. "Miss Sullivan, you have duties." "It's fine." The voice came from the doorway, and we both jumped. Giovanni stood there in shirt sleeves and dress pants, coffee mug in hand, watching us with an expression I couldn't read. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and for a moment he looked almost human. Almost approachable. "Let her stay." He disappeared before I could respond, but something had shifted. He'd noticed me. Not as furniture, but as a person who'd made his son smile for the first time in however long. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Mornings in the kitchen, afternoons with Ryan, evenings cleaning rooms that never seemed to get dirty. Ryan started seeking me out, pulling me into the playroom with questions about everything: why trains stayed on tracks, how birds flew, why the sky changed colors. I answered what I could, made up the rest, and discovered that spending time with him didn't feel like part of my revenge plan. It just felt right. 2 weeks in, he found the notebook in my bag. I'd been careless, leaving it on the bench in the playroom while I cleaned up after lunch. It was my old MIT notebook, filled with sketches of security patterns, password systems, encryption basics. Stuff I'd learned before the world fell apart. Ryan's small hands grabbed it like treasure, flipping through pages covered in letters and numbers and diagrams. "What's this?" His eyes were huge, fascinated. "Secret codes?" My heart jumped. I should have taken it back, made up an excuse, hidden it away. But something in his expression, that hunger for something interesting, something challenging, made me pause. "Kind of," I said slowly, sitting beside him. "It's about how to hide messages. Make them secret so only certain people can read them." "Like spies?" "Exactly like spies." His grin was pure sunshine. "Can you teach me?" That's how it started. Every evening after dinner, while Giovanni worked late in his study, Ryan and I would sit in the library with markers and paper. I taught him the basics: simple letter substitution where A became D, B became E, shifting everything 3 letters forward. Nothing complicated, just enough to make him feel like he was learning real secrets. "See?" I drew it out on paper. "If you want to write hello, you shift each letter 3 spaces. H becomes K, E becomes H, L becomes O. So hello becomes core. Only someone who knows the pattern can read it." Ryan's tongue stuck out in concentration as he worked through his own message. When he finished, he showed it to me proudly: LOLNHBRX. I decoded it in my head: "I like you." Something cracked in my chest. This kid, who'd been abandoned by everyone who mattered, was trusting me with his secrets. Using the patterns I taught him to say things he probably didn't feel safe saying out loud. "I like you too, buddy," I said, throat tight. He beamed and went back to creating more coded messages, filling pages with jumbled letters that meant something only to us. I didn't notice Giovanni standing in the doorway until I felt that shift in the air again. When I looked up, he was watching us, expression unreadable. Our eyes met, and for a moment something passed between us, not quite understanding, not quite trust, but something. He turned and left without a word. That night, Mrs. Wordsworth summoned me to Giovanni's study. My heart hammered as I climbed the stairs, wondering if I'd crossed a line, if he was going to fire me, if the coded messages had revealed too much. The study was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with books and a massive desk that probably cost more than my entire education. Giovanni sat behind it, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking through papers. He gestured to the chair across from him without looking up. Sit. I sat, hands clasped in my lap to hide their shaking. MIT, he said, still not looking at me. Computer science major, full scholarship, dropped out sophomore year after your father died. Worked a string of jobs under different names for the past 10 years. The agency thinks I don't check backgrounds, but I check everything. My blood turned to ice. The fake name, the fake references, they'd been worthless from the start. He'd known who I was from day one. Then why did you hire me? My voice came out steadier than I felt. He finally looked up, those ice blue eyes pinning me in place. Because you're smart enough to get past a basic vetting process, desperate enough to take a job you're overqualified for, and careful enough to hide it for 2 weeks before curiosity got the better of you. He set down his glasses, leaning back in his chair. The question is why you're really here, Sophie Sullivan. And don't insult my intelligence with the money excuse. People running from debt don't walk into the lion's den unless they're hunting something. I could have lied. Should have lied. But something about the directness in his gaze, the way he'd laid out every card he held, made the lies stick in my throat. My name is Sophie Russo. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched recognition flicker across his face, not of my name specifically, but of the surname. Russo. Daniel Russo. A ghost from 10 years ago who'd barely registered as significant in his empire. Your father, he said quietly. You put a bullet in his chest and threw him in the Hudson. The words came out harsh, raw with 10 years of buried pain. I was 18. He was everything to me. And you killed him like he was nothing. Giovanni didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Didn't offer excuses. He just studied me with those calculating eyes, running through scenarios and probabilities like I was a problem to be solved. You came here for revenge. I came here for truth. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. I wanted to understand why. What he did that was worth his life. What makes a man like you decide someone needs to die? He crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Giovanni's voice carried no emotion, just cold fact. He knew the rules and broke them anyway. He was warned, multiple times, to stay in his lane. He didn't listen. That's how this world works. That's how your world works. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. Normal people don't murder someone over territory disputes. Normal people don't throw bodies in rivers and move on like it never happened. Normal people don't last long in this business. He stood, moving to the window, hands in his pockets, silhouette dark against the city lights beyond. What was your plan, Sophie Russo? Get close, find evidence, go to the police? Kill me yourself? Hurt my son to balance the scales? No! The word exploded out of me, fierce and immediate. Ryan is innocent. He's a child. Whatever I came here planning, it never involved him. It never would. But it involved something. Giovanni turned back to face me, and for the first time, I saw something other than ice in his expression. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition of a fellow survivor playing a game they didn't fully understand. You've been here 2 weeks. You could have stolen information, planted evidence, done a dozen things to damage me. But instead, you've been teaching my son to smile again. Teaching him codes and patterns, giving him challenges he actually enjoys. Why? I didn't have an answer that made sense, even to myself. Because he deserves better than what this world gave him. Better than what it gave me. He's 7 years old and he's already learned that everyone leaves. That's not right. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I know that. My voice rose before I could stop it. I've known that since I was 18 years old and the police showed up at our door with my father's body. I've known it every day for 10 years while my mother slowly broke apart and I worked jobs that barely kept us alive. I know life isn't fair, Mr. Martinelli. But that doesn't mean I have to make it worse for a kid who didn't ask for any of this. The silence stretched between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic and distant sirens. Inside, the study felt like the only room in the world. Finally, Giovanni moved back to his desk, but he didn't sit. He stood there, hands braced against the polished wood, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Mrs. Wordsworth is retiring next month. She's been with my family for 15 years, but her health is failing and she wants to move back to England to be with her daughter. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I need someone to manage the household and continue with Ryan's care and education. Someone smart enough to handle complications. Someone who understands what it means to lose everything and keep going anyway. My heart hammered against my ribs. The job is yours if you want it, Sophie Russo. Real name, real salary, real chance to decide what kind of person you want to be in this house. You can stay and help raise my son, or you can walk away and I'll forget you were ever here. But if you stay honest. No more fake names. No more hidden agendas. Just the work, and Ryan, and figuring out how to live with the ghosts we both carry. He left before I could respond, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone in the study surrounded by leather-bound books and the weight of an impossible choice. I sat there for a long time, Papa's locket warm against my chest, thinking about revenge and justice and a 7-year-old boy who just wanted someone to stay. When I finally left the study, I found Ryan asleep on the couch in the library, clutching a paper covered in coded messages. I picked him up carefully, carried him to his room, tucked him in under superhero blankets. He murmured something in his sleep that might have been "Don't go." "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The next morning, I found Giovanni in the kitchen drinking coffee before dawn. I stood in the doorway, still in my nightclothes, hair loose around my shoulders. "I'll stay," I said simply. As Sophie Russo. For Ryan. And because maybe we both deserve a chance to be something other than what our pasts made us. Giovanni looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Welcome to the family, Sophie." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, that's all you get. The first month as Sophie Russo instead of Sophie Sullivan changed everything and nothing all at once. Mrs. Wordsworth trained me with the efficiency of a drill sergeant preparing a successor for war. Household accounts, vendor contacts, Ryan's medical records, Giovanni's schedule, everything laid out in meticulous detail. She showed me which rooms Giovanni preferred undisturbed, which security protocols never changed, how to read his moods from the way he poured his morning coffee. "He's not an easy man," she told me one afternoon while we inventoried the wine cellar. "But he's fair, in his way. Loyal to those who earn it. Ruthless to those who betray it. You've earned something by staying honest, Miss Russo. Don't waste it." I thought about that a lot. Honest. I'd confessed my real name and my dead father, but I hadn't confessed the hatred that had brought me here. The revenge fantasies that still sometimes woke me at 3 a.m., heart pounding, Papa's face bleeding into Giovanni's until I couldn't tell victim from murderer anymore. But those fantasies were getting quieter. Harder to hold on to. Ryan was part of the reason. He bloomed under the attention and challenges, trading tantrums for curiosity. We expanded beyond simple letter codes to pattern recognition games, logic puzzles, basic computer security concepts explained through stories about castles and keys and dragons guarding treasure. He soaked it all up like a sponge, his sharp mind finally getting the stimulation it craved. "Sophie?" he asked one evening while we worked on a new puzzle. "Why did your dad die?" The question came out of nowhere, innocent and devastating. I set down my marker, choosing words carefully. He made some bad choices. Got involved with dangerous people. Sometimes adults do things they think will help their families, but those things end up hurting everyone instead. Like Mama? My chest tightened. What do you mean? Papa doesn't talk about her. But I heard Mrs. Wordsworth tell the chef that Mama made bad choices too. That she left because she wanted money more than she wanted me. His voice stayed steady, but his small hands twisted the marker. Do you think that's true? I pulled him close, this little boy carrying wounds no 7-year-old should have to carry. I think grown-ups are complicated. We make mistakes. We hurt people we love without meaning to. But Ryan, listen to me, none of that is your fault. Not your mama leaving, not my dad dying, none of it. You're just a kid. You're supposed to be a kid. He nodded against my shoulder, and we sat like that for a while, two people trying to figure out how to live with the ghosts adults had left behind. Giovanni started joining us some evenings. At first, he'd just stand in the doorway watching, silent as a shadow. Then he'd drift closer, asking questions about what we were learning, offering observations that showed he understood the patterns better than he let on. He had a sharp mind hidden behind the crime boss exterior, strategic, analytical, seeing 10 steps ahead in everything. You're teaching him to think like a hacker, Giovanni commented one night after Ryan had gone to bed. We were alone in the library, the coded worksheets spread across the table between us. I'm teaching him to think, I corrected. To see patterns, solve problems, protect himself. The world's dangerous. Better he knows how to navigate it. The world I've brought him into, you mean? It wasn't a question. I met his eyes, ice blue and tired in the lamplight. Yes. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking, slid one across to me. You could have said no. Could have walked away when I gave you the chance. I could have done a lot of things. I took the whiskey, let it burn down my throat. But Ryan needed someone to stay. And maybe I needed to stop running. From your father's death? From everything. The admission came easier than expected, loosened by whiskey and late-night honesty. I spent 10 years being angry. Being scared. Working jobs that didn't matter, hiding who I was, watching my mother fade away because grief was killing her as surely as any bullet. I was so focused on surviving that I forgot how to live. Giovanni studied me over his glass. And now? Now I'm here, teaching your son, drinking your whiskey, trying to figure out if people like us get second chances. I set down my glass. Do we? I don't know. He stood, moving to the window, silhouette dark against the city lights. I've done things that don't deserve second chances. Your father wasn't the first, won't be the last. This world I built, it runs on fear and blood and choices that keep me awake at night even when I tell myself they were necessary. Then why do it? Because someone has to. He turned back, and for a moment I saw past the crime boss to the man underneath. This city, this business, it exists whether I run it or someone else does. At least I have rules. Lines I don't cross. Children are off limits. Civilians are off limits. I don't deal drugs to kids or traffic women or burn down neighborhoods for profit. The men who'd take my place if I fell? They wouldn't have those limits. That's a thin justification for murder. It's the only justification I have. He moved closer, and I felt that shift in the air again, the predator intensity focused entirely on me. I won't apologize for your father, Sophie. He knew the risks. He made his choices. But I am sorry that you paid the price for them. Sorry that your mother paid. Sorry that an 18-year-old girl lost her future because of decisions made by men in backrooms. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Why tell me this? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because you stayed honest even when it could have destroyed you. Because you're raising my son to be better than I am. Because, he stopped, jaw tightening. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you walked into this house, and that terrifies me more than anything I've faced in 20 years. The confession hung between us, raw and dangerous. I should have walked away. Should have remembered why I'd come here, who he was, what he'd done. But instead I stood, closing the distance between us until I could feel the heat of him, smell the whiskey and expensive cologne. This is a mistake, I whispered. Probably. His hand came up, cupping my face with unexpected gentleness. Tell me to stop and I will. I didn't tell him to stop. His kiss was different than I'd imagined in those forbidden moments alone in my room. Not violent or demanding, but careful, almost reverent, like I was something precious that might break. His other hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back, deepening the kiss slowly, thoroughly, until I forgot why this was wrong and remembered only that it felt right. I kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like whiskey and danger and promises neither of us could keep. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Sophie. Don't. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't apologize. Don't tell me all the reasons this can't happen. Just, not tonight. He nodded, pulling me close, and we stood there in the silent library holding on to something we both knew was impossible, necessary, and completely, utterly forbidden. His phone buzzed in his pocket, harsh reality intruding. He pulled back with a curse, checking the screen. I have to go. Business. At midnight? His expression hardened back into the crime boss mask. The kind that doesn't wait. He left, and I was alone again with coded worksheets and empty whiskey glasses and the taste of him still on my lips. I touched my mouth, feeling the slight swelling, the evidence of a line we'd just crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. What had I done? More importantly, what was I going to do now? I gathered the worksheets, turned off the lights, and headed downstairs to my room. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Papa's locket heavy on my chest, feeling like I'd betrayed him all over again. Or maybe, for the first time, I was choosing to live instead of just survive. I didn't have answers. But as dawn crept through my small window, painting everything in shades of gray, I knew one thing for certain: everything was about to get a lot more complicated. The next 2 months were a study in stolen moments and dangerous territory. Giovanni and I circled each other like magnets with reverse polarity, drawn together, forcing ourselves apart, then inevitably colliding again. A brush of hands passing Ryan's homework. Lingering looks across the dinner table. Late nights in the library where conversation turned to confessions, and confessions turned to kisses that left us both shaking. We were careful. His world had eyes everywhere, soldiers who reported to him, rivals who watched for weakness, a child who couldn't understand the complexity of adults playing with fire. So we hid it. Snatched minutes in the wine cellar during Ryan's naps. Whispered conversations in his study after midnight when the house slept. Secret smiles across crowded rooms that felt more intimate than any touch. Ryan noticed anyway. Kids always do. Do you like Papa? He asked one afternoon during our lesson time, coloring in a pattern recognition worksheet with careful precision. My heart stuttered. Of course I do. Your dad's a good man. Not like that. Ryan looked up, two knowing eyes studying my face. Like how the people in movies like each other. With the kissing and stuff. I should have lied. Should have redirected. Instead, I set down my marker and met his gaze honestly. Would that bother you? He thought about it, really thought, chewing his lip the way he did when working through a hard puzzle. Nanny Clara liked Papa that way. She tried to kiss him once and he sent her away the next day. I was sad because she was nice, but Papa said mixing feelings and work was dangerous. Your dad's probably right. But you're different. Ryan said it with such certainty. You make him smile for real, not the fake smile he uses with business people. And he comes home earlier now. And last week I heard him laughing on the phone with Uncle Tommy, talking about someone making him feel human again. That's you, right? I pulled him close, this observant, brilliant child who saw too much. Yes, that's me. But Ryan, it's complicated. Adult stuff that even we don't fully understand yet. Mama left because she didn't like complicated. His voice went small. Are you going to leave too? No. I meant it with every fiber of my being. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens with your dad, I'm here for you. That's a promise. He hugged me tight, and I held on, terrified of how much this child had come to mean to me. How much his father had, despite everything. Giovanni found us like that later, and the look he gave me, grateful, vulnerable, completely unguarded, nearly broke me. That night, he came to my room for the first time. I was reading in bed when the soft knock came, wearing an old MIT t-shirt and pajama pants, hair loose around my shoulders. I opened the door to find him standing there in his shirt sleeves, tie gone, looking more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. This is inappropriate, he said. Extremely. If anyone knew, they'd think you were taking advantage of the help. I stepped back, letting him in, closing the door quietly behind him. Or that I was seducing you for leverage. Or a dozen other ugly things that people think about situations like this. Are you? He moved closer, backing me against the door. Seducing me for leverage? If I was, I'd be better at it. My hand slid up his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath my palms. I'd be using tears and manipulation instead of arguing with you about Ryan's education and reorganizing your security protocols without permission. His laugh was quiet, surprised. You reorganized my security protocols? The cameras in the North Wing had blind spots you could drive a truck through. I fixed it. You're welcome. Sophie Russo. He said my name like a prayer and a curse. What am I going to do with you? I have some ideas. He kissed me then, and this time there was no careful restraint. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger we'd both been fighting, hands sliding into my hair, pressing me back against the door. I kissed him back just as fiercely, fingers working the buttons of his shirt, needing to feel skin instead of expensive fabric. We made it to the bed somehow, tangled together, his weight pressing me into the mattress. It felt right in a way nothing had felt right in 10 years. His hands mapping my body like sacred territory, my name on his lips like a confession. We moved together in the darkness of my small room, and for those stolen hours, nothing else existed. Not my father's ghost, not his empire of blood and secrets, not the impossibility of any future beyond this moment. After, lying tangled in sheets that smelled of us both, his fingers traced the locket I never took off. Tell me about him. Your father. I could have refused. Should have. But something about the darkness and the warmth of his body against mine loosened the words I'd kept locked away. He was funny. Told terrible jokes that made Mama groan and me laugh until my stomach hurt. He taught me to play poker when I was 10, said a woman who could count cards would never be helpless in the world. He wasn't perfect, got involved in things he shouldn't have, gambled more than we could afford, made promises he couldn't keep. But he loved us. Loved us so much he thought he could beat impossible odds if it meant giving us a better life. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. I remember him. Not well, he was small-time, not really on my radar until he started moving into territory that belonged to the Colombo family. They came to me for permission to handle it. I said no, offered him a deal instead. Work for us, stay in his lane, everyone walks away happy. He said no. He said no. Said he wasn't going to be anyone's errand boy. I respected that, in a way. Respected that he'd choose pride over survival. Giovanni's arm tightened around me. But the Colombos didn't respect it. They pushed harder. Your father pushed back. It escalated. And eventually I had to make a choice, let the Colombos handle it their way, which meant your whole family would have disappeared, or handle it myself with rules. One bullet, quick, body where the police would find it so at least you'd have closure. I wanted to hate him for how matter-of-fact he sounded. But I'd lived in this world long enough now to understand the calculations, the impossible choices between bad options and worse ones. You're telling me I should be grateful? The words came out bitter. No. He turned to face me, eyes serious in the shadows. I'm telling you that your father's death is on me, but so is the fact that you and your mother survived. I made sure the Colombos knew you were off limits. Made sure no one came after you for his debts. It doesn't balance the scales, Sophie. Nothing balances them. But it's the truth. I didn't know what to do with that truth. So I kissed him instead, and we lost ourselves in each other again, two broken people trying to build something whole from shattered pieces. He left before dawn, as he always would. Proper distance maintained for Ryan's sake, for the household's sake, for the fragile thing between us that couldn't survive daylight scrutiny. But the cracks were showing. Frankie DeLuca noticed first. Giovanni's underboss, a stocky man in his 40s with cold eyes and colder instincts. He cornered me in the kitchen one morning while I was preparing Ryan's breakfast. "You're good," he said, leaning against the counter with false casualness. "Real good." Almost had me fooled. "I don't know what you mean." The innocent act. Sweet girl just trying to make an honest living, happened to stumble into the boss's house. Except you're not sweet and you're definitely not innocent. You're Daniel Russo's daughter, and you've been playing us all from day one. My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice steady. Giovanni knows who I am. Has from the beginning. If it was a problem, I wouldn't be here. That's what worries me. Frankie moved closer, invading my space. The boss has been soft since you showed up. Coming home early, smiling, distracted during meetings. He's got his priorities mixed up, and that makes him vulnerable. Makes all of us vulnerable. I'm not the enemy. You're sleeping with him. Don't bother denying it, I've got eyes everywhere. You think that's love? You think a Russo and a Martinelli end happily ever after? His smile was cruel. You're either playing him for revenge or he's playing you for insurance. Either way, someone's getting played. He left before I could respond, but the damage was done. Seeds of doubt planted in soil already fertile with guilt and fear. That night, I found evidence that made everything worse. I was in Giovanni's study. He'd given me the access codes weeks ago, trusting me with household finances and schedules, when I found the folder tucked behind his desk drawer. Old surveillance photos from 10 years ago. My father meeting with Colombo soldiers. Bank records showing deposits that matched Colombo payment schedules. Evidence that Papa hadn't just been crossing territory lines, he'd been working for the rival family, feeding them information about Martinelli operations. He'd been a spy. A traitor in Giovanni's eyes. The bullet hadn't been about territory. It had been about betrayal. I sat there staring at the photos until they blurred, until my father's face became a stranger's. Everything I'd believed about his death, about his innocence, about Giovanni's guilt, it was all more complicated than I'd wanted to admit. Giovanni found me like that, frozen and shaking. You weren't supposed to see those. His voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Were you ever going to tell me? I don't know. He sat beside me, not touching, giving me space. You were so certain he was innocent. So certain I was the monster. I didn't want to take that from you. Didn't want to make you choose between the father you remembered and the man he actually was. He betrayed you. Betrayed everything he claimed to stand for. He was desperate. Broke. Gambling debts eating him alive. The Colombos offered him money, and he took it. That doesn't make him evil, Sophie. Just human. I looked at the man beside me, the crime boss who'd killed my father but protected my mother, who ruled with ice and blood but melted for his son, who'd given me truth when lies would have been easier. I don't know who the good guys are anymore. There aren't any good guys. Giovanni pulled me close, and I let him, needing the solid warmth of him. Just people making impossible choices and living with the consequences. The phone buzzed then, Tommy's name flashing on the screen. Giovanni answered, expression darkening with every word he heard. When? Pause. How many? Another pause, jaw tightening. I'm on my way. He stood, already transforming back into the crime boss, the vulnerability shuddering behind ice. There's a situation. I have to handle it personally. What kind of situation? The kind where people die if I don't move fast. He kissed my forehead, quick and fierce. Lock down the house. Don't let Ryan out of your sight. I'll explain when I get back. He was gone before I could argue, leaving me alone with my father's ghost and a truth I didn't know how to carry. The situation exploded 3 days later. Frankie made his move while Giovanni was handling business in Brooklyn, ambushed a warehouse shipment, killed 2 of our guys, and planted evidence pointing straight at me. Text messages on a burner phone he'd planted in my room, showing coordination with Colombo soldiers. Bank transfers to an account with my name on it. Photos of me at locations I'd never been, meeting with men I'd never seen. It was masterful. Completely fabricated, but masterful. Giovanni stormed into the house at 2 a.m., Tommy and 3 soldiers at his back, rage rolling off him in waves. He found me in the library with Ryan, reading bedtime stories because the boy couldn't sleep. One look at Giovanni's face and I knew everything had changed. Ryan, go to your room. His voice was cold, controlled, the crime boss who'd ordered my father's execution. Papa. Now. Ryan looked between us, fear dawning in his eyes, then ran. I heard his door slam upstairs, and we were alone with armed men watching every exit. Tell me it's not true. Giovanni's hands shook, with rage or heartbreak, I couldn't tell. Tell me Frankie's lying about the evidence. That you haven't been feeding information to the Colombos this whole time. I haven't. I stood, meeting his eyes, refusing to cower. I don't know what evidence you think you have, but it's fake. Planted. I've been here for you and Ryan, nothing else. Then explain the text messages. The money transfers. The surveillance photos showing you meeting with known Colombo soldiers. I can't explain them because they're not real. My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Giovanni, think about this. If I wanted to betray you, why would I leave evidence lying around? Why would I stay here, get close to Ryan, let myself fall in? I stopped, the words catching in my throat. Fall in what, Sophie? He moved closer, ice blue eyes searching my face. Love? Is that what you were going to say? Because love doesn't mean shit in this world. Your father loved you and still betrayed everyone around him. My ex-wife claimed to love me while stealing from our accounts and planning to sell Ryan's location to my enemies. Love is just another weapon people use. Then you've already decided I'm guilty. Tears burned, but I refused to let them fall. You've already made up your mind that I'm like them. That everything between us was manipulation. I don't know what to believe anymore. The confession came out raw, broken. I let you in. Let you close to my son. Let myself. He turned away, hands fisted at his sides. Tommy, take her to the basement. Lock her down until I can verify the evidence. Giovanni, please. Take her. Tommy grabbed my arm, not rough but firm, and I didn't fight. What was the point? Giovanni had already convicted me in his mind, just like he'd convicted my father 10 years ago. History repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. They locked me in the wine cellar, the same room where we'd stolen desperate kisses between dusty bottles, where his hands had mapped my body and his mouth had whispered promises. Now it was a prison, cold stone and locked doors and the bitter irony of love turning to ashes. I sat on the floor, back against Bordeaux racks, Papa's locket clutched in my fist, and finally let the tears come. Hours passed. I heard footsteps overhead, raised voices, Giovanni barking orders. Then a different sound, a child's voice, high and frightened. Let me see her. Papa, please, let me see Sophie. Ryan, go back to your room. No! She didn't do anything wrong. I know she didn't. The door opened. Ryan flew down the stairs in his pajamas, Giovanni close behind, and threw himself into my arms. I held him tight, this precious boy who'd become my whole world, while he sobbed against my shoulder. She teaches me codes, Papa. Real codes, hard ones. If she wanted to betray us, she could have done it 100 times. She could have taught me bad stuff, planted things in my head, used me. But she didn't. She just loved us. His voice broke on the last word, and something in Giovanni's expression cracked. He knelt beside us, hand reaching out to touch Ryan's hair, then mine. Sophie. I found the real evidence. Tommy appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand, looking grim. Frankie's been skimming for months. When he realized you were getting distracted, getting happy, he panicked. Figured if he could frame Sophie as a traitor, you'd go back to being the cold bastard who only cared about business. He fabricated everything. Photos are photoshopped. Bank account was opened using stolen identity information. Text messages came from a clone phone he had made. Giovanni's face went white. Where is he? Runners grabbed him trying to flee to Atlantic City. He's in the warehouse waiting for you. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Giovanni pulled me close, crushing me and Ryan between his arms, his whole body shaking. I'm sorry. Christ, Sophie, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. Should have known. You were protecting Ryan. I pulled back enough to see his face, seeing the guilt and fear and love all tangled together. You were doing what you thought was right. I almost lost you both. But you didn't. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. We're right here. We're safe. And Frankie's going to pay for what he did. Something dangerous flickered in Giovanni's expression. Yes. He is. He left to handle Frankie. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know, while Tommy let me and Ryan out of the cellar. We went upstairs, and I held the boy until he finally fell asleep, exhausted from fear and tears. Giovanni found us in Ryan's room hours later, dawnlight creeping through the windows. He'd washed the blood from his hands, changed his shirt, but I could see the violence in his eyes, the cost of justice in his world. It's done, he said simply. Good. He sat on the edge of Ryan's bed, looking at his sleeping son, then at me. I meant what I said before. About not knowing what to believe. But these past hours without you, thinking I'd lost you. I know now. I believe in you, Sophie Russo. I believe in us. Even though I'm Daniel Russo's daughter? Especially because you're Daniel Russo's daughter. You could have destroyed me 12 times over. Could have used my son, my business, my feelings against me. But you chose love instead of revenge. Chose to build instead of burn. He took my hand, pressed it to his chest where his heart hammered. I love you. I should have said it before, should have trusted it. But I'm saying it now. The words I'd never expected to hear from the man who'd killed my father. The words that rewrote every plan I'd made, every promise of revenge. I love you too. Simple truth. Complicated reality. But Giovanni, we can't. I know. It's impossible. My world, your past, the danger we're both in just by being together. He smiled, sad and determined. But I'm done with impossible. I'm done letting fear decide what I'm allowed to have. If you'll have me, have us, I want to try. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Mama's number. I answered, dread pooling in my stomach. Sophie? Her voice was weak, barely recognizable. Baby, I'm at the hospital. The doctors say it's cancer. Stage 4. They're not sure how long. The world tilted. Giovanni caught me as I swayed, phone dropping from my fingers. What is it? My mother. She's dying. He didn't hesitate. Pack a bag. I'll have the jet ready in an hour. We'll bring her here, get her the best doctor's money can buy. Giovanni, you can't just. Yes, I can. Let me do this, Sophie. Let me help save the one part of your family I didn't destroy. So we went to Boston. Giovanni, me, and Ryan, flying north to the cramped apartment where Mama waited, scared and alone. When we walked in, me and the man who'd killed her husband, I expected anger, rejection, rage. Instead, Mama looked at Giovanni and started crying. You have his eyes, she whispered. Sophie's father. That same sadness behind all the strength. Giovanni knelt beside her hospital bed like a supplicant before a saint. Mrs. Russo, I'm sorry. For your husband, for your pain, for every tear Sophie cried because of my choices. I can't undo the past. But I can try to earn forgiveness in whatever time you have left. Mama touched his face with trembling fingers. You love my daughter. More than my own life. Then you're forgiven. Because she's alive, and she's happy, and that's all a mother can ask for. We brought her to New York, installed her in the best room with round-the-clock nurses and experimental treatments that gave us 6 more months instead of 6 weeks. 6 months of Mama teaching Ryan to make her famous lasagna, of her and Giovanni sharing quiet conversations about loss and redemption, of our impossible family growing into something real. When she died on a Tuesday morning with all of us holding her hands, she went peacefully, whispering that she'd see Papa soon and tell him his baby girl had found her way home. We buried her next to Papa, Giovanni pulled strings to make it happen, and stood together at the graveside. Me, Giovanni, Ryan, and Tommy, who'd become something like family in the chaos. She forgave you, I said to Giovanni as we walked back to the car. I'm not sure I've forgiven myself. Then we'll work on it. Together. 6 months later, Giovanni proposed in the wine cellar where everything had started. Got down on one knee surrounded by dusty bottles and the ghost of our first kiss, offering me a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I know it's insane, he said. Russo and Martinelli, former enemies, building something new. But Sophie, you're my second chance. My proof that people can change, that love is stronger than blood feuds and old wounds. Marry me. Help me raise Ryan. Help me build an empire that does more good than harm. I said yes. We married quietly, just Ryan, Tommy, and a priest who didn't ask questions. I became Sophie Martinelli, though I kept Russo as my middle name, refusing to erase where I came from. Giovanni gradually transformed his operations, using the money from his old empire to fund legitimate businesses, community programs, scholarships for kids like Ryan who needed chances more than they needed crime. It wasn't redemption, nothing could redeem everything he'd done, but it was something. A better path forward. Ryan grew up brilliant and kind, using the pattern recognition skills I'd taught him to become a cybersecurity expert who protected people instead of exploiting them. He never forgot where he came from, but he wasn't defined by it either. And me? I stood in the library 5 years after that first day, watching Giovanni teach Ryan advanced chess strategies, and realized I'd found what I'd been searching for all along. Not revenge. Not justice. But peace. The kind of peace that comes from choosing love over hate, building over destroying, forgiveness over grudges. Papa's locket hung around my neck, next to the ring Giovanni had given me, 2 pieces of gold representing death and life, past and future, loss and love. "What are you thinking about?" Giovanni asked, catching me watching them. "How impossible this all is. How wrong it should be. How right it feels anyway." He crossed to me, pulled me close, kissed me in the library where we'd first admitted the truth. "Love doesn't follow logic, Sophie. It just is." Then I'm glad we broke all the rules. Me too. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic and distant sirens. Inside, we had this stolen happiness from the wreckage of tragedy, a family built from enemies, love growing in soil poisoned by blood. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. But it was ours. And sometimes, that's more than enough. If you enjoyed Sophie and Giovanni's journey from revenge to redemption, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about forbidden love, second chances, and the power of forgiveness. Drop a comment below telling me, would you have stayed for love, or left for revenge? What would you have done in Sophie's shoes? Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next emotional story. Thanks for watching, and remember, even in the darkest places, love can find a way to grow.